Hey guys, my name's Aaron McManus, and you are listening to the Battle Ready podcast. I'm here with my dad, Erwin McManus, and I want to just talk about two different things. One, we have a new book. I say we, but really my dad has a new book coming September 14th. We're starting something kind of around it. We're doing a docu-series that we'll release in the next coming months. I'm really excited about it. Go to thegeniusof.com. Go to it now. Sign up to get all of the first information, all of the first links, all the connection points, everything that we're doing with the Genius of, thegeniusof.com. Go there now, okay? Second thing, we have a new place, a new home on YouTube. We've been a part of Mosaic, which we love. We both go to church at Mosaic. My dad is the founder and lead pastor of Mosaic. I've been gifted to be a part of the team for a long time. We are now doing our own YouTube channel. It's our Battle Ready Podcast YouTube page. So go to our Instagram, go to the link tree, the link in the bio, and subscribe. Subscribe, send it to somebody, have them subscribe. If you can't find us, that's where we are. We're no longer wherever you're watching this. We're on a new home on YouTube, our own Battle Ready channel. Hopefully we'll throw up some behind-the-scenes stuff. It'll be exciting. Subscribe to it. We had some interesting things happen this week.
We did. It's been quite a contrast of experiences.
Quite a contrast. And so I don't know what you mean by that. What's the contrast of experiences?
Well, we have the NBA playoffs happening, which, of course, we're pretty excited about.
We had the Warriors-Lakers game. And then this is a couple of things. We also had, what's his name? Stephen A. Smith. But what's the other guy's name?
Max Kellerman.
The Robin to his Batman. Max Kellerman. I was listening to Max Kellerman this week. Max Kellerman.
I love Max.
Max Kellerman is garbage.
No, he's
garbage.
Not. I love Max Kellerman.
I love Max Kellerman too until this week.
Well,
until
he has
this
been
week.
really hitting on the Clippers. And
He
he's
hates
throwing a lot of shade that way.
Just Max Kellerman is Robin to Stephen A. Smith's Batman.
But I think Stephen A. Smith has been really.
How many times Robin dies in Batman movies? Robin dies in Batman movies, right? He ain't gonna make it.
Yeah, but Stephen A. Smith has been pretty negative about the Clippers too.
But I don't listen to Stephen A. Smith.
But I do. I listen
because I've already written him off because he hates the Clippers so much. But Max was saying basically that the Clippers avoided the Lakers in the first round because they're afraid to play the Clippers. Sorry, the Clippers are afraid to play the Lakers. The reason is because the Clippers lost their last two games to pretty terrible teams. So Max was saying this, Stephen A. was saying this, that Clippers threw the last two games of the season, so they didn't have to play the Lakers, and they would be put on opposite brackets.
If the Lakers had done that, they would have said LeBron was a genius and that he knows how to play the game and how to manipulate the system.
But this is why I'm saying Max Kellerman's trash. And I don't mean him as a human being. I just mean his opinions. The last three takes. He's talking about this whole week he's talked about it. He said that the Clippers were avoiding the Lakers, and as we watched the Warriors and Lakers game, we know now what Max didn't know then, that the refs are so biased in LA that they favor the Lakers over anyone. Over everyone.
And definitely there's a anti-Clipper bias with refs.
Absolutely.
And an incredibly pro-Laker bias. So when those two teams are in the same
Tyrone Lue knows this.
It's
the
so
coach.
Disproportionate. Yeah.
The team knows this. Jerry West knows this. Jerry West knows this. Jerry West used to be a part of the Lakers organization.
Mm-hmm.
Jeannie Buss left him off of her top 5, top 10 list.
How can there be a top 5 for the Lakers without Jerry West?
He's the logo. He is literally the logo of the NBA.
There must be something personal going on.
But I'm going to compare this to something in life because I think in life we all mature, we all grow, we all evolve. He started with the Lakers, and then he became a great man and went to the Warriors. And then he's become.
Well, he also went to the Thunder. Didn't he go to the Thunder? The Grizzlies? I think he went to the Grizzlies.
No, I don't know. If you don't know, I don't know.
Okay.
And then now he's at the Clippers, helping the Clippers organization become excellent. He's now become a Clipper fan, and I don't think that Jeannie Buss could handle it very well.
Yeah, well, I just don't know anyone who can hate on Jerry West.
I don't know anyone who can hate on Jerry West.
What an iconic human being.
It's a sin. It's despicable. So here's the deal.
All right, so Max and
Clippers knew.
We disagree with you. One, I don't think the Clippers were avoiding the Lakers. I think the Clippers didn't care if they were 3 or 4 because it wasn't going to change their path very much. They're going to rest Kawhi. They're going to rest Paul George. They're going to rest their talent and let the younger guys get experience.
There were guys on the court I never even knew were on the team.
You know what? Me too.
They were throwing those games pretty badly. But they almost won both of them, which was kind of also funny as well. Here's my thing. I don't think they were avoiding the Lakers. I do think they were wise because they knew that an LA show-off, face-off, was going to be so favored to the Lakers they weren't going to have a chance. Mm-hmm. Right? They also, I don't think they want to play the Suns or the Blazers. They'd rather play Utah Jazz
and the Mavericks. Absolutely, I would too.
Luka Doncic is going to get thrown out of every game because he can't stop running his mouth.
I mean, the reality is that eventually you're going to have to face the Brooklyn Nets.
Eventually.
So you're going to have to beat the best team in the NBA.
The Brooklyn Nets are kind of like Justice League, the first movie. What was his name? Joss Whedon, the one he directed. Like that the characters should be good, but it's really bad to watch.
Ooh.
It's really bad to watch. It's really bad to watch. I love Kyrie, KD, James Harden. I love all of them. That is one hot mess of a franchise over there.
They need Zach to go in and fix it. NBA, it's not the playoffs. It's the play-in, but it's not the regular season.
But is it now the playoffs?
Is that sort of like where you're dating someone, but you're not really dating them, but you're hanging out all the time? It's the play-in.
Here's the other thing. This is why I don't hate Max. I actually do love Max Kellerman. He's really fun and enjoyable. But this is what I also disagree because LeBron comes out. He says, I hate the play-in system. This is whoever decided this should be fired. This doesn't make any sense. And if you don't know what this is, play-in essentially, it's like the bottom 4 teams in both conferences
have a playoff.
7, 8, 9, 10 places have a playoff. The 7 and 8 play, the 9 and 10 play, which is also weird.
But then whoever loses the 7-8 plays the winner of 9 and 10. So 7-8 gets 2 chances to get into the playoffs. Oh. So it is an advantage for 7-8.
So is there a second play-in game?
Yes. So the Warriors are now going to play the Grizzlies to see who gets the 8th seed.
So the Warriors could still make the playoffs.
That's right.
Is that real?
That's real.
That's real. Austin throws his thumb up. That's real.
It's amazing. I love that.
Are you just cringing in there, Kevin?
I get to watch Steph Curry play one more time at least.
You know what? And if you're
such a gift.
Such a gift. And if you're one of Kevin Peña's friends and you're thinking that I hate the Lakers, I do hate the Lakers. I do. I wanted to like them. I wish I could like them. I have a Lakers hat. And R.I.P. Kobe, who was one of the greatest players that ever lived. I'm never going to speak a bad thing on that man's name. But they're just fun to hate. Kobe made them fun to hate.
Well, it's not the Lakers. It's the Laker fans.
It is the Laker fans. It is Kevin and all his friends who are my friends too that I love.
And when they're bad, they're irrational. And when they lose, they always throw someone under the bus that's on their team. They're disloyal.
Lakers, they know too.
Ask Paul Gasol who the Laker
sacrificed.
fans are.
Who did they sacrifice? Who was the play? Oh, they sacrificed. He was on the Toronto Raptors. 3-point shooter. What's his name?
Danny Green.
Danny Green. Poor Danny. I love Danny Green.
He's had a great career.
He also
went to University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. He's a Tar Heel just like I am.
He did.
So we're always going to love him.
He had a bad year on the Lakers, and those guys ate him alive.
They have to pick someone. They picked Paul Gasol. They picked Danny Green. They
picked Lamar Odom.
Oh, and... But it was never,
They picked Lonzo Ball.
Yeah. They got rid of Shaq.
When
they had a chance to win 6 in a row.
Every year, the Lakers sacrifice somebody to the basketball deities.
Throw them into the volcano.
Throw them into the volcano. Please give us another Kobe. Please give another Magic.
And then I just had to laugh because I could see. I was seeing 3, so I just shot for the middle one. I just think that's kind of funny.
So basically, the semantics of the game. LeBron on a foul from Draymond Green, which this is what I think. They were saying it should have been a flagrant 1 or a flagrant 2. He should have gotten kicked out. It wasn't even a flagrant 1, right? It was just a foul.
Common foul.
I do think it was a little aggressive because we know Draymond hates LeBron. So there is some bad blood there. There was intent. There was malintent. I agree. It probably should have been a flagrant one. I'm glad they didn't call it because I think it helps LeBron. It helps Draymond.
No.
What?
Slapping someone in the head is a flagrant foul. Poking their eye is just a common foul.
But his body went straight up, but his arms went out, and that to me
but
is
it seemed to me he was
unacceptable.
trying to block his field of vision.
Yeah, but if you hit him, that's the problem. That's the issue.
And it was a foul.
Right, and I get where it's teetering the flagrant one, the common foul situation. But my thing is,
But what about when LeBron absolutely just trucks into the layup and doesn't get called for a foul at all?
Doesn't get called for a foul at all.
Doesn't even touch the ball, just collides into the body.
I want to know if Jeannie Buss owns a hotel in Cabo where the refs stay at after this series. That's what I want to know. That's what I want to know.
All right, wait a minute. I think we're digressing.
Are we digressing?
Are we gonna pull any principle out of this?
Well, I can't get fined by the NBA. No principles at all. If you've made it this far, 10 minutes in, we are very grateful. Let's go into some real stuff.
Yeah. The one thing I do love about sports is that they're a great distraction from the heavy and serious problems in life, and strangely grateful for those few moments of reprieve in life.
Yes.
But
what?
You've got a lot of feedback. In fact,
Your legs are so far; they're on my side. My legs are tucked underneath my chair. I can feel your toes right now.
All right, and let's move on. All right, what other important things are we going to talk about?
Well, we have something you really want to get to. So should we tease it now, talk about other things, and then go back to it?
Well, I thought we probably should just do a short follow-up on some of the response we got from last week's podcast on the Palestinian-Israeli conflict.
Yes.
And
future of humanity, the fight for humanity.
Overwhelmingly, the comments have been incredibly positive, and people
Very
have been really grateful for what they considered to be a very humane and balanced conversation. We've had a few negative.
Did we get any negative?
I think we had one.
I didn't see it. I think you saw it.
I saw it. It began real positive. It ended real positive. The middle was pretty much I don't have any courage, and or integrity.
Right.
In the middle, because I acknowledged any value for the Israelites, or for the nation of Israel. It was a very pro-Palestinian, and I would have been upset, except that I felt like this person's writing out of pain.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing when you hear responses from one side. If a person's completely one-sided, there'll never be a real engagement or acknowledgement or analysis of Hamas and their role. And if you are only engaged on proving that Israel's 100% right, you only talk about Hamas and their role.
Yeah.
And so it's challenging because the information you use in many ways is the best window into your own perspective and your own position. And one of the challenging things is to be able to look at a situation and not have the conclusion at the beginning.
Right.
Because if you have your conclusion at the beginning, all the information that you process is filtered in or out based on bias.
One thing that I found really interesting, and not to just throw people under the bus by any means, or like openly critique people, because I think if I meet people, like I say I hate the Lakers, but if LeBron James was in here and he was like, oh man, I just want to be on Battle, I'd be like, yes sir, yep, thank you so, I love you LeBron.
You're the best.
I love you. I would find
You're
that
the greatest
Lakers
athlete
hat.
in the world.
I would dig some stuff out. I'd be like, LeBron, I've always thought about you as the greatest athlete of all time. I would cower in that moment.
And which I think is important to note, that it's fun to love teams that hate teams, to love players that hate players. But the moment they're off the court, those people are human beings, and you have to relate to those people not as the character they play on the court, but the person they are in real life.
Absolutely. Okay, so here's my thing. So we live in LA. We get a lot of the celebrity, the influencer. That's like whether you're following them or not following them, you see a lot of it because people repost the things that other people are posting. I have friends on both sides. I have friends who are Jewish, and I have friends who are Muslim.
And we have people that are Palestinian.
Yes. Yeah. And we have people who are part of Mosaic and people who aren't.
Yeah.
And it's really who are part of both, which is really incredible. And so I was talking to someone this weekend. She listens to Battle Ready. She's becoming a friend, and She was obviously deeply emotional about what's going on over there. She's Lebanese, and they live in LA now, and they live down the street. They've been coming to Mosaic, and they've listened to us a lot during the pandemic, which is like really cool. That they're actually like super open to kind of hearing but what we're talking about. But we were talking, and I was like, look, she sends me really great videos because I asked her to, and she's like, we opened a really great dialogue. She's something really like a really positive text about our last podcast, being like, thank you for talking about both sides. And I am seeing more of that now, being like, whether I'm like, I have a friend who's also a really great person who is Jewish, and her and her boyfriend are my friends, and she was talking about, she's like, I'm Jewish, but I also have friends who are Muslim, and she's like, I'm talking about it from the perspective of people need to stop blowing each other up. People need, like, right. She's having more of an open-minded conversation, but also going like, this isn't okay and this isn't okay, and we got to call it what it is, and we got to make some changes. But one thing that I was talking about was like, celebrities on either side seemed very skewed. Like a lot of the infographics and the posts on Instagram and the stories, they were really, really, really asymmetrical to one side. Yeah, it was Palestine has never done anything wrong. Land is stolen from them, and the Jewish people are trying to kill us and murder us, and they are the actual terrorists. And it seemed like for a moment, popular opinion was leaning very, very, very,
it has very much moved in that direction,
and almost anti-Semitic, in a way.
It's odd. It doesn't become anti-Semitic when you're dealing with the nation of Israel. It's described as anti-Semitic if it's acts of violence against Jewish people in other countries.
Right.
But for some reason, it isn't really described as anti-Semitic if you are anti-Israel as a nation.
Right.
I'm not saying that makes any sense to me. I'm just saying that's my observation.
And that seems to be the posture of a lot of people, especially in like the major cities on the coasts.
Right.
So the Hadids posted something, Bella and Gigi, models, influencers, whatever. They're local LA people. They were posting stuff pro-Palestine.
Yeah.
Look, I get backing.
But it wasn't just pro-Palestine.
It was like
it was definitely anti-Semitic.
Definitely anti-Semitic. Definitely anti-Israel. Yeah. Israel terrorists. Jews are trying to hunt Palestinians, trying to kill everybody. It was pretty heavy stuff, but it was branded with like a sugary coating, like beautiful branding, beautiful infographic, like very clean. And I was like, this is so interesting. This is brainwashy stuff, crazy stuff. So I said to my friend, I was like, look, if you're reposting the Hadids, and not that she was, I don't think she was, but I found it through somebody else. If you're reposting these people are social influencers. Not that they don't get to have like their opinion, but whenever you claim that one side is completely and unanimously right and perfect, you know you can't trust that opinion.
Right.
Because this has been a problem for thousands of years. Both parties are at fault to some degree. And not in every situation, but I think in the overall like destruction of each other, they have a part to play, and they've played a role in each other's destruction.
Yeah, and I don't even know the psychological effect. I've read this multiple times. I'm not sure if the numbers are right. Like I read that over 3,000 missiles were sent from Hamas to Israel.
Okay.
To bomb Israel.
Right.
When I read 3,000, that seems to be an impossible number. I don't know if you guys can fact check that.
I think it was 1,000 in just the night we were looking with like the famous photo, the infamous photo where the Israeli Iron Dome are firing like protection missiles over.
So the Iron Dome has the ability to neutralize those missiles before they hit the ground, and I think they said that 90% of those missiles were diffused.
Yeah.
And so if Israel didn't have the defense system, can you imagine the massive death toll that would have taken place on the Israeli side? And so sometimes what's being measured is, oh, look what Israel's doing because of the impact and effect of it, and oh my gosh, the films of the children and families that were killed in the Palestinian side just break my heart, and they're horrific.
But I'm talking about misinformation.
Yeah.
How to know who to believe.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying it's like there's so much information, and if you're leaving out information because your argument doesn't hold up, if you bring in all the information, you're not, I think, you're not having journalistic integrity. And,
yes.
And of course, people on Instagram and people who are influencers
are not journalists,
right? But they're speaking as if they're journalists, and so that's one of the challenges. And for me and for us on Battle Ready, I genuinely have not tried to take a side. I'm just trying to create empathy, awareness, and a conversation where both sides can actually have mutual respect. And
I got an email this last week from a woman who I think she was in Colorado, and she was saying, I really love the podcast. I'm really grateful, even though you guys contradict yourselves a lot. And I responded with, thank you so much for sending this message and taking the time out to email me. But we it's not a contradiction. We leave room to change our minds, to ask questions about both sides, to look at it from different perspectives, and to adjust. That doesn't make me a hypocrite. It makes me someone who's growing and evolving and changing. And I responded kindly, but I was just like, you're just used to I don't know if I'm saying this person is, but I think a lot of people are used to the hard-lined alt-left, alt-right.
Yeah, if you're not dogmatic, you contradict yourself.
Yes, and yes.
And I'm going, look, Israel can do something wrong on Tuesday, which doesn't mean that Palestine can't do something wrong on Wednesday.
100%.
And you have to be able to look at things and be honest and objective, as objective as you can be, and say, just because you're pro-Israel doesn't mean everything Israel does is right and everything Palestine does is wrong. Just because you're pro-Palestine doesn't mean everything Hamas does is just or right, and that everything Israel does is wrong. Right. You have to elevate your thinking beyond such dogmatic frameworks.
So so back to the misinformation, when you look at like a Bella Hadid's post about this, like this really like clean branded infographic on how basically Israel is evil, Jews are evil, Palestine is perfect. And I'm going, man, if you don't admit to any wrong at all, you don't own any issues that you guys as a nation or as a people group have made mistakes, then you're no better than the other side saying that you're evil.
Well, you're certainly not contributing to a future peace.
Not at all. And that I think is the thing that is like really eye-opening, because someone sent me a video. I didn't want to send it to you on Monday because I didn't want you to wake up to it. But at my favorite sushi spot on La Cienega, down the street from us, there was a video, and there's Palestinians driving around in Jeeps, waving Palestinian flags and whatever, do your thing, but full like traditional garb. And then they get out of the cars and they start attacking these Jewish guys. And one of the Jewish guys picks up like a big pole and swings it at the 8 dudes coming at him. And I'm like, I don't know the whole story, but I do know that behavior like this, and this kind of is referring back to the conversation I had with my friend again, who came to church, is that are both sides embarrassing the God that they believe in? Are we an embarrassment to God?
Yeah. And when
this is beyond which God is right or which God is real or who owns the land. You're just now at a place where you're embarrassing yourselves to the thing that you're supposed to go to the world to help to understand.
Yeah, and those 8 guys beating up the one Jewish guy, they're not helpful to the Palestinian people at all.
No.
They're hurting their cause, not helping it. And in the same way that if 8 Jewish guys
went to a
Palestinian and beat them up, you're actually making the other side's argument better and not your own.
And I said it to my friend. I was like, every culture has their troublemakers, the people who are going to look for a fight and going to go attack each other. And it seems like the news or the social media news or whatever it is, it's like it's always skewed. You're never seeing the full argument on any platform. How do we know what's real, what's not? How to not be played by our emotions or the algorithms that are feeding us information? Because that's what it feels like even more than anything else.
Yeah. So I want to be clear: if you're a Palestinian, if you're a Palestinian Christian, a Palestinian Muslim, a Palestinian atheist or agnostic, you're welcome at Mosaic. We love you.
100%.
If you're Jewish, if you're an Orthodox Jew or a progressive Jew or an atheistic Jew, a secular Jew, you're welcome at Mosaic. Yeah. And we want to create a space where, that's the world we have to imagine and work for, where Palestinian and Jews and people of every nation can come together and be family, be community, and treat each other with love and respect.
Yeah, it's really tough. So I think the second part to if you haven't listened to the last podcast, listen to it. Check out this part afterwards. But essentially, on last Friday, we talked a lot about what's going on in the world, and now it's really hit New York City, it's hit Miami, it's hit Chicago, it's hit LA, where people on the street are fighting. And I think it's just we're in a kind of a scary place with it. Definitely praying for everyone involved. I don't even know how to talk to some of my friends about it, And I think, and one of our friends in the group that was talking said, I don't really know how to have an opinion on this because he's like, I feel so far removed.
Yeah.
And then my friend said it's very similar to BLM, and I'm like, no, I think it's even crazier because BLM I think is a solvable issue because it's we've been doing this for 300 years in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
This is something like
3,000
years old. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or at least 2,000.
And so at least 2,000. And so it's like it becomes. I'm like, can you solve a problem that's lasted forever?
Yeah, and that is rooted in multiple layers of complexity from disputed territory to disputed holy land to disputed religious beliefs to disputed
Can I ask you a question?
abuse and violence. Yeah.
Can you solve a problem that's lasted for thousands of years?
Yes, you can.
How?
Not easily.
How?
I think that, first of all, what you have to recognize is that usually what you're fighting about are not the real problems.
Okay.
That there are fundamental problems that have to be solved, and they can only be solved if the value, rights, and dignity of the other side are held at 100%.
So I'm going to ask you again. Can you solve a problem that's lasted for thousands of years? And
My
how?
answer again is yes.
How?
You have to care about the other side's win as much as your own.
And that's the stand.
That's the standoff, is that both sides are win-lose.
Yeah.
Or lose-lose. They'd rather both lose than to have the other side win.
Should either one win?
Yes, because there are innocent civilians everywhere who are suffering because governments, politicians, military leaders, ideologists, dogmatic authoritarian leaders can't resolve their issues.
I have a question. As like a taxpayer in the U.S. and I have paid taxes. I'm paying taxes right now.
And remember, the more taxes you pay, it means the more money you made.
Yeah, I'm grateful. I'm blessed. I'm not complaining. I have two bones to pick with the university system in the U.S. They don't teach you taxes unless you're going to become an accountant.
You should learn that in high school.
You should learn it in high school 100%.
Yeah.
You should go from middle school to high school to college. Tax 1, tax 2, tax 3.
10th grade.
I've paid more taxes than I've learned about taxes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and if you're listening right now and you're a parent,
yes,
let me tell you what you need to do if you have a kid that's under 18.
Yeah, what?
You need to go to the bank right now, open up an account in their name, get them a credit card, put $1,000 in that account, and start spending.
Or $100 if you can't do $1,000.
Yeah,
$100.
$100. It doesn't matter, and then start spending money on that credit card every month and paying it off on time. By the time your child is 18 or 21, they will have the credit rating to be able to buy a house or buy a car or
get an actual loan that they need.
Get the loan they need. And so start now. If your kid is 10 years old, it's not too soon.
Right.
And some of you are listening in your 20s.
Pay your phone bill off with that credit card.
Yeah. The most important things to learn before you're out of high school is how to do your taxes, how to have the highest credit rating possible, and how to manage your money.
So here's my thing. Yeah. I pay taxes. I hate so much that we fund any country, not Israel. Israel's just an interesting thing because it's bringing up the point. I hate that we're providing weapons, missiles, military around the world. It bothers me. I don't hate the military. I really respect the military, but I don't like the actual function of missiles and bullets and guns and tanks and things that we're obviously giving other countries massive amounts of.
Yeah, it becomes an issue. It seems like across the world we pick smaller countries to have big wars. Because sometimes you wonder, is it really those countries fighting, or is it the United States and Russia fighting, or the United States and China fighting, or Great Britain and the Eastern Bloc? Right? It's like a lot of times it seems like smaller countries become the territory from which larger nations are having their wars.
Yes,
and we need to ask big questions about the ethics, the morality, and how to change that aspect of of the kind of the global dynamic of war.
And that brings me to this, because I don't want you to. It isn't me being anti-Israel at all. It's just me going, as a taxpayer, I go, I really don't want to fund wars. Like, I understand the necessity of protection and having a military, and I know that America, the U.S. does a lot of good, it also does a lot of bad. This is a situation that our next topic, because the U.S. has been notoriously involved in Central and South America's politics.
Yes.
Since probably the 50s, 60s.
Mm-hmm.
You were born in 58.
Mm-hmm.
You immigrated to the U.S. when kind of not by choice, because you were going back and forth. You'd go back to Salvador, spend summers, spend time with your mom, spend time with your grandparents.
Yes.
And then when the wars broke out in El Salvador, you couldn't go back to your grandparents anymore.
Yeah, no, I grew up seeing American engagement and involvement in foreign policy from a different perspective because I'm an immigrant.
Right.
And anybody who knows me knows I love this country. I'm incredibly grateful to live here.
Yeah, I think that's... Yeah,
we
we both do.
Yeah.
We talk about it all the time. We're like, we live in a great country.
Yeah,
we're grateful.
Like, I can live anywhere in the world pretty much that I want, and I want to live here.
Yes, that's
So let me be really, really clear about that.
Yeah, we're just talking about the betterment and maybe some of the. We
But like my
ask
nation,
some questions.
Yeah, I'm a dual citizen. Citizen of this country, citizen of El Salvador. El Salvador was where I was born. It's my first citizenship. And we had like this one-day war. I think it was against Honduras. Honduras. And I remember specifically hearing the United States doesn't get involved in regional conflicts, And so when Honduras attacked El Salvador, the United States did not get involved. When El Salvador won the war in one day and took over Honduras, the United States got involved. And
didn't they take over part of Guatemala as well?
I don't remember the details.
Okay.
It's been so long.
Yeah.
And but I just remember as a kid paying attention to this going, the United States only gets involved if it's economically beneficial to them.
What were they growing in Honduras?
We had companies there like Chiquita Banana.
In Honduras, right?
Yeah. And just not as much in El Salvador. And
right.
And I'm sure I am naive to all the political, economic nuances of those kind of relationships. I'm just saying that as an outsider, it doesn't look as clean as it does when you live here in the States. When you're living in another country, there are times I think. By the way, El Salvador actually applied to become a state of the United States of America.
Did it?
Yeah, and we were turned down. So, we did not get the rose.
No, we did not get the rose.
We wanted to be the Bachelorette, and we did not get the rose. And think about the problems that would have been solved if the United States had allowed El Salvador to become a state. And frankly, I think Latin America would have been transformed in a positive way. Because whether we like it or not, with all the negative sides of the United States, it's actually usually a really good thing when this kind of government now shapes the future of a people. And
yeah, because there's so many benefits to being connected to the U.S. in that regard. I mean, just the way we do government, as flawed as it is still probably one of the best systems in the world.
Yeah, so I wish El Salvador had become part of the United States. I wouldn't have had to apply for citizenship and live on a green card for 40 years of my life. Yeah. But
we watched. Sorry, go.
No, go ahead, please.
I was saying because we watched a really great article from. Do you want to introduce the subject we're about to talk about?
Yeah, I was really angry by an article.
Yes. So
from
the
LA
U.S.
Times
meddles in things sometimes it shouldn't meddle in. It definitely got involved in El Salvador. And then the LA Times releases an article.
Yeah, on Nayib Bukele, the new president of El Salvador.
A young guy?
Oh, he's so young. He's in his 30s. He's super hip or as we would say, super cool.
He's super cool. He's often photographed with his presidential hat
he's
with
got a
backwards.
baseball cap on backwards. He wears blue jeans and tennis shoes and t-shirts.
He does interviews with YouTubers and big internet people in Latin America.
He's a marketing guy.
He is a marketing guy.
Yeah, and his wife is amazing. She's elegant. She was a ballerina.
Yeah.
They're beautiful parents. I think they have a little girl. She's beautiful, and they are El Salvador's version of John and Jackie Kennedy.
Incredible.
And it's it's a love affair with a leader that El Salvador's never really had.
Never had.
And then I see the LA Times, and their title of their article is El Salvador's millennial president is a man with one vision, power. And when you talk about Max Kellerman being trash, because of what he said,
Yes.
I was so angry thinking I stopped ordering the LA Times years ago because I felt it was trash.
Yeah.
And I ordered it for years because I believe in all things Los Angeles.
Right.
But I'm like, this would make the National Enquirer proud. And you can't say you have objective journalism or an objective article in World and Nation when you're basically saying this man has one objective power. How did you come to that conclusion, by the way, LA Times?
Well, but let's listen. Go. You want to rant? You want to rant? Go. No, I don't want to stop it. You were about to go.
No, we'll get there.
Here's the thing. Let's talk about the things that could be misconstrued that he's done, because what he has done,
Well, some people listening don't even know about him, And,
right.
And I do think this is an interesting transition because we've been talking about Palestine, and I want to read just one section that just gives us a little bit of his own.
From the LA Times.
Yeah, it says Nayib's, speaking of his father, he worked at a public relations firm owned by his father, Armando Bukele, a successful businessman born to Palestinian Christian immigrants to El Salvador. So Bukele is actually, in his ancestry, a Palestinian Christian. But then it goes on to say, Armando Bukele's politics were clear. A convert to Islam who founded El Salvador's first mosque. He was a supporter of the Palestinian independence movement and sympathetic to the leftist guerrillas fighting U.S.-backed armed forces during El Salvador's war. His public relations firm later ran campaigns for the Farabundo Martí National Liberation Front, the political party that sprang from remnants of the guerrilla movement. So I'm sitting here talking about a president whose family comes from the leftist perspective. They were a part of the leftist, more socialist, guerrilla supporting party. That would not be the party that I would support. I would support a democratic party and not a socialist party.
Right.
Not the guerrilla party, but I wouldn't support the dictatorships that existed in the past. And so it's interesting that Nayib comes from this left side, but he now is being criticized for quote, wanting to create a dictatorship.
But socialism would often have a dictator at the helm.
Oh, well, yes, that's the way socialism takes over.
So what they're saying
countries.
is that what his behavior is now aligned with his pedigree.
Well, but it's also because he's not actually advancing socialist ideology.
Which you think is the actual subversive messaging in this.
The LA Times.
Because the LA Times would be more backing of socialist movements.
Well, I just think that they're more...
yes or no?
They're more quick to criticize Nayib than they would be Venezuela.
Very interesting, which is an actual socialist movement.
And you don't hear a lot of criticism about Cuba, and so I think this is kind of interesting to me because he's only been president a couple of years.
Yeah, 1 year, 9 months.
In El Salvador,
maybe 11 months.
You get to be president for 5 years.
And that's it.
And then you don't get to run again until someone else is president, and then you get to run again.
So 5 years on, 5 years off.
Yeah, and so the structure of Salvadorian politics has been set in such a way where hopefully dictatorships will not emerge again. And I have said in the past, the problem with Latin America is we have two forms of government, revolution and dictatorship. And that the revolutionaries become the dictators, and then the dictators get overthrown by the new revolutionaries, and then they become the dictators. And that's the history of Latin America. That's the history of my people. And I'm hoping for the first time we can actually see something different. And so several things came to my mind. One is he has a 90% approval rating.
Which is unheard of in politics.
Right, and they use that as proof that he's a dictator. And I'm going, wait a minute. If you have 90% approval rating, you don't have to be a dictator. You can actually be an elected official.
Well, are they questioning the validity of the poll?
No.
Or are they questioning it doesn't make sense, because if the people are actually voting that 90% of the people are saying he's great.
I think it's the elitism of American liberalism that says other countries can't think for themselves.
100%.
That my people are not smart enough to know how to know if a president's doing a good job.
Yeah.
And I actually think that sometimes often we hold other nations to a different criteria from which we hold ourselves. So I'm sitting there going, okay, remember, he has a 90% approval rating. Our last president couldn't even hit 50%. Okay, and so I'm going, all right.
What was President Obama's highest?
Yeah, find out because Obama's so popular. So let's
so popular.
What would be his highest approval rating? And I mean, Bush, I think, had the highest approval rating in modern time after 9/11, and then of course it dropped and tanked.
Obama's highest approval rating was 68%.
68. That is extraordinary.
Wow.
And it doesn't even touch.
That's a D.
90%.
That's a C minus. It's a D.
Yeah. So the best we get is a D, and the Salvadorian president in less than 2 years has an A. Now, when you have an A, you cannot write an article that has any credibility saying he wants one thing, power, and that he's trying to establish a dictatorship and he's destroying the country.
So can we talk about the reason why he did one thing that
he did a few things.
He did a few things that would make a democratic system uncomfortable. Can we say that? Because I want to get into the things that he has done that are, I think, far more remarkable.
Yes, he has definitely used military influence to let people know that certain choices need to be made.
Right.
And I know that that's hard for Americans to understand, except you're coming out of a system of such immense corruption that corruption and politics, I know this is hard for Americans to understand, but in El Salvador, corruption and politics are inseparable.
Right.
Oh, I think that may be true here.
That may be true here. We just lie to ourselves about it.
And so there's several things here. One, when the Khmer Rouge regime came into Cambodia, one of the first things they did is they killed everyone who was educated. The communist socialists went in and killed all the educated class. They actually killed people who wore glasses because they thought people who wore glasses were the readers and were most likely educated.
That's insane. That's like ethnic cleansing stuff.
It was horrible. That's where you have the killing fields and a massive massacre.
The mass graves.
Yeah. And one of the things you can know across the world is whenever communism or socialism takes over, the educated are vulnerable and usually...
Which is very interesting because socialism is bred and duplicated under the guise of intelligence and the intellectuals, right? We're the highest educated. Socialism makes sense. It is the end all. It is the achievement of government and social and economic power and influence merging together. Right. The power of the people. And it is ironic that, or not ironic, but very a dark reality that when socialism comes, like the death of actually free thinking.
Right. And if your only vision is power, what you do not want to do is educate the people.
Interesting.
So one of the things that Bukele did is that he used government money to provide laptop computers to every, I think, senior in high school. And
I think it was high school students.
Every high school student, and is actually in the process of making sure every child in the country has a laptop.
Yeah. So we were reading about it right before here. So he made a commitment to provide the youth with education tools. So he gets all high school students laptops and said they need it the most because they will be in the workforce the soonest.
Right. And so if you're trying to establish a power center where you're the authoritarian leader,
you don't educate.
You don't educate the people.
Right.
That's the last thing you want to do. You don't want to educate the masses. So clearly he's using his power. And by the way, every world leader wants power. Joe Biden wants power. Donald Trump wanted power. Barack Obama wanted power. George Bush wanted power. I can go back to every president. And you become president because you want to use power. The question is not whether presidents want power. The question is, what do presidents want to do with that power?
Yeah. and I don't want to get into what each president did, but I want to say this. So he provides high school students with computers. He's now on a progressive mission to essentially get all of the young people under, I think, 4th grade with tablets, because he said tablets are easier for young people to use, for children to use.
That's right. And one of the ways you pull people out of poverty is education.
He also goes in and goes, these weren't donated, they weren't given. He goes, we bought them with tax dollars. We are educating the people with people's finances. And so
what an amazing thing to do as a government.
Amazing thing to do as a government. We are so privileged that we actually go to schools that have computers, that have Macs, that have Microsoft-driven computers. Like the fact that we have this readily available in a lot of our schools is incredible.
Yeah, and during quarantine, I read that in New York, one of the problems with homeschooling or online schooling,
couldn't afford tablets.
There are thousands of kids that couldn't afford tablets. In our progressive, advanced country, kids in New York,
one of the wealthiest cities,
didn't have the technology to go to school during the quarantine.
It's insane.
And so you have this small country of 6.5 million people, and the president's trying to provide the technology for the next generation to be free of the oppressive nature of poverty and illiteracy.
So they don't mention that in the LA Times article, which I find is very interesting.
Well, they certainly don't make that a center point of what he's trying to do, because it doesn't match the title, that his vision is power.
Right.
Maybe his vision is empowerment, and he knows you have to reclaim the power to give the power back to the people.
So I can't believe I'm advocating for Tucker Carlson, but we're kind of deep diving on some interviews with the president of Salvador. I can never say his name, Nayib Bukele.
Yeah, very good.
So he does an interview, sit down with Tucker Carlson. He doesn't answer a single one of Tucker Carlson's questions. He kind of talks essentially about what his agenda is with being the president of El Salvador. I thought that was really interesting. And I thought it was cool that Tucker Carlson actually sat down with him. I think it was earlier this year or late last year.
Yeah.
And they talked through essentially how it was one of the murder capitals of Latin America.
Well, I mean, San Salvador has had the highest murder rate in the world.
Right.
And when you look at El
Only
Salvador,
trailed by Nicaragua and Honduras, which are the neighboring countries. So 3 of the most deadly, highest murder capitals in the world are grouped together.
So I think 2 years ago, we had 103 murders for every 100,000 people. And then I think a year later, with Nayib, it went to 50 murders for every 100,000 people. Now it's at 20 murders for every 100,000 people.
And they had their first day with 0 murders in the I think in the modern history of the country.
Of El Salvador.
That's like 60 years or something like that.
And I think there was 8 days without a murder. I know that doesn't sound like a lot if you're listening here, but frankly, I don't think that happens in the United States at all.
That does not happen in the south side of Chicago or in South Los Angeles.
You have to remember, this is the epicenter of MS-13. This is the epicenter of some of those violent, most notorious gangs in the world.
So he does a huge thing where he reforms the prison system and the way that it functions so that there isn't this essentially mafia being run from the prisons.
Right.
Solves that problem, reduces murder by 70%. In the country,
which
70%.
Is extraordinary.
And then what I loved what he said on Tucker Carlson was he breaks it down. He goes, look, I understand why everyone was leaving, because they're talking about illegal immigration.
Right.
So Tucker's trying to get him to advocate for illegal immigration. And what I loved about it.
Yeah, Tucker's really wanting to press an agenda of we don't want illegal immigrants here.
And what I loved about Nayib Bukele was that he goes, yeah, it makes sense why everyone wanted to leave. It was horrible if you stayed. You would be murdered, or you would be in a situation where someone that you love would be murdered. So of course you'd want to leave to go to a country where even at the risk of death, you'd want to leave and go and send money back to the family that couldn't get it out.
Yeah, he said that basically our economic system in El Salvador is we sneak into the United States and work our butts off and then send money back home.
Yeah, and he goes, that's not a good economic strategy for either country.
Right.
He goes, and most definitely not El Salvador. He goes, he says, what I'm doing now is making the country as safe as possible so people don't want to leave. They can stay, they can build businesses, they can grow the economy, and their families don't have to leave. Families can come back and actually live in a successful economic environment.
Right. He said the 2 things he's committed to is security and economy.
Yes.
He said, if we're going to keep our people, if we're going to stop the migration of our intellectual property and our future generations leaving El Salvador, we need security, we need economy. But you cannot have a vibrant economy until you have legitimate security.
Yes.
If people are being killed everywhere and robbed everywhere, you're not going to have a thriving, vibrant economic system. And
I think 2 things come to mind right here. One, this is so polarizing.
Yeah.
that we, and I think it's such a huge contrast to our reality. Most people in the U.S. do not live in a reality where they're in danger every day of their life. Obviously, in some of our most impoverished inner city situations, there is so much happening that we don't know, that we don't hear, that we aren't experiencing firsthand. I know in LA, it's become more widespread, even in places where you would have been safe over the last 15 years. Of now, there's murders, there's situations, there's gunmen, there's XYZ, but we don't live in a reality as Americans where you potentially could die on your way to work. Most Americans don't live that reality, right? The second thing is that the fact that a country is he comes from, his party is the party of ideas.
Yes,
right?
New ideas, yeah.
The party of new ideas, his political party that they're saying is a dictatorship trying to take over the country. So if the party that takes over the country is the party of new ideas, I don't think that's a bad thing. And the question I asked you was, is it dictatorship if the people don't want them to leave? And I think that's what the U.S. is worried about, right?
Yeah, and I really want to press in on that because I was trying to think about L.A. Times calling Nayib a dictator after not even 2 years.
Right.
But we didn't call FDR a dictator when he was elected 4 times and
didn't leave
and was in the White House
died.
for 14 years. And yeah, he had to die to leave office.
And then he made sure that he closed the door behind him and wouldn't let anyone else run for more than 2 terms.
Right. So he knew that was inherently wrong, but he did it 4 times.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And what we don't call FDR a dictator, and we don't actually write our history saying after or during this season of American history, America was taken over by a dictator. See, if you use the same criteria for Nayib and Bukele, then you need to write the history that FDR was a dictator.
Right.
And then people are saying, well, Donald Trump was trying to create a dictatorship. The essential reality is that the Republican Party is, by population, way smaller than the Democratic Party.
Right.
And so the only party that could actually create a dictatorship in America is the Democratic Party. And what's interesting to me, because you have to have certain conditions for it. And so even the conversations about expanding the Supreme Court so that the Supreme Court would become completely democratic, that's a part of a nuanced strategy to create a political party dictatorship. And how come the LA Times isn't writing about that? And so I'm looking and going, we have had 3 elections in my lifetime that have been questioned in the United States: the Bush-Gore election, the Clinton-Trump election, and the Trump-Biden election.
Okay.
Yeah. And when Bush won in Florida, our democracy was really fragile.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to be the ideal democracy in the world, and yet our election was really unclear at that time. And then when Trump was elected, Democrats said that the Russians actually colluded and manipulated our election, and so Trump actually didn't win. And there was never a moment where it was acknowledged that he actually won. It was always a question of whether he was actually our elected president.
Yeah.
And then Trump, which I don't think has any root in reality, but says, well, then the election was stolen from him. And I'm going, we need to pay attention to our democracy and, rather than writing LA Times articles about El Salvador's democracy. And then I looked at this section of the article and I thought this was interesting. This is an interesting highlight. El Salvador's president accused of using coronavirus to bolster autocratic agenda. And it explains that he imposed, I think it was a 6-week lockdown, a quarantine, to try to intervene on the spread of coronavirus across the nation. I'm going, wait a minute. All right. Wherever you followed this thing, Trump did not want a quarantine. Right, but the CDC did, and Dr. Fauci did, and so we end up with almost a year in quarantine. For more than a year, we've not been allowed to do things that free people are allowed to do, and even with Biden, we're still not allowed to do things that free people are allowed to do. And California and LA, oh my gosh, between Newsom and Garcetti.
Yeah.
Like, why hasn't the LA Times written about the dictatorship of California with Newsom and Garcetti?
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Why haven't we talked about the dictatorship of using executive order to tell us what to do rather than recommend, mandating and making illegal things that we did not vote for as American citizens? In the last 18 months, we've been told to do things that we never got to vote on. It seems to me that we're the ones that are on the fringe of losing our democracy. And yet, Bukele actually calls for national quarantine, and that's used as evidence that he's bolstering his autocratic agenda. And I'm just, maybe it's me, maybe it's because I'm a Latin America, but it seems to me that there's more going on here than meets the eye. And I just like to ask the LA Times, how many people from El Salvador did you actually interview to get perspective on what's happening in our country? How many people did you actually talk to about what's happening in our country? Because you haven't had to deal with decades of violence. You haven't had to deal with the aftermath of a war that left our children with no skill except the ability to kill each other. You don't understand that 9 and 10-year-olds were given machine guns. 11 and 12-year-olds were trained by guerrillas to be killers. And when the war quote is over,
they had no profession.
The only occupation they have is to create MS-13 and to become professional killers. And
so here's the thing. How do we offer a solution, and how do we provide some takeaways?
You're heated. I'm upset.
We're about to hit the 1 hour mark, and if you've made it this far, we're really grateful, because we very rarely does my dad get like this, and I think it's very good that you are, because I think it shows that you're passionate. You've often said that you wish that the only downside of being an immigrant is that you can't run for president of the United States. Then I said, well, you could run for governor, and you're like, yeah, I don't want to do that. But you could probably run for the president of El Salvador, for sure. Have you ever thought about that?
I thought about it for many, many years.
Yeah.
And because as much as I love my country, the United States, I also love my country, El Salvador.
Right.
And our history is tragic. Our potential is unlimited. Mm-hmm. It's maybe the most beautiful country in the world.
Okay.
And a stunning topography, the geography, the nations, the people are beautiful people. And hard workers, intelligent, driven.
Have you ever thought about it?
I have thought about it. And
would you ever do it?
Well, they have Nayib Bukele, and I think that I hope he proves everyone wrong in the LA Times.
I think he is already.
I think he's doing what
I'm a huge
wanted
fan.
to do. And now I'm feeling like maybe I should run for governor of California, because I think California is in greater danger of losing its democracy than El Salvador.
Yeah. Have you seen who's running for governor of California?
And you can post that
Yikes.
on the internet.
You can post that on the internet too. Google that. That's getting bizarre. The moment we have the Terminator and reality TV stars running for politics, we are in political positions. We are in an interesting place.
I have so much more to learn about this issue. I just think it was an irresponsible article by the LA Times.
Yeah. Kate Lithicum, go to El Salvador before you write about it.
And maybe, interview Nayib Bukele and let him share his perspective in an article that's so one-sided.
Yeah.
Because power is not a vision. Power is a means to fulfill a vision. As a journalist, you didn't even take time to figure out what the vision was. And I just expect better from American journalism.
I don't. I know who they are and what they do. And American journalism is now, what is it? Like, it is the MySpace. Like, our kids won't read the LA Times because they will see it as the same garbage as TMZ and Vanity Fair. Not in its entirety. There's still goodness in it, but the reality is that where do we get valid information, right? Because a lot of it is things like even us. We're talking about people talking about something that's actually happening. Yeah. So I want to plug something, and I also want to go back and do some stuff for the beginning, but I want to plug this. You were working on a series, thegeniusof.com.
Yes.
A new book is coming out.
Yes.
We haven't named the name, but you are working on a new book, and that's connected to it. So go to thegeniusof.com, enter your information. It's just an email, just keeping updated. But we're going to start launching projects with my dad, Erwin Raphael McManus, sitting down, hopefully, with some of the most interesting minds and voices and geniuses of their time. I would love to sit down with someone like Nayib Bukele.
Nayib Bukele, will you come on my documentary series, The Genius of?
We've got to, if you know him, if you know someone who knows him, if you know someone who knows him, let's do it. But go to thegeniusof.com. The website is live. It's just an email subscription. The stuff is coming soon. Your book launches September 14th.
It does. I'm so excited.
And so now, from now until then, we're going to talk about it a lot.
And we'll do a public announcement very, very soon.
Very, very soon. Okay. Love you guys. Thank you for supporting. Rate and review this podcast on iTunes. Go to it. Rate and review it. Do it now. 5 stars. Leave a comment.
This has been a fun conversation.
Been a fun conversation.
Hey, thank you, bud.
Love you.
You too.
Bye.